Today on the Locked On Blues podcast, the St. Louis Blues have been pretty dominant in their last two games, all led by young goaltender Joel Hofer, who's expected to make his third straight start tonight as the St. Louis Blues take on the Detroit Red Wings. Going to be talking about their last game against Winnipeg, tonight's game against Detroit, and more. Should be a good episode. Make sure you stay tuned.
Locked On Blues, your daily podcast on the St. Louis Blues. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to the Locked On Blues podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, and your number one source for Blues content. I'm your host, as always, Josh Hyman. If this is your first time tuning into the show, welcome. Like I said, I'm Josh. I've been covering the Blues through various forms, Twitter, writing articles, and podcasting for about 5 years now. If this isn't your first time tuning in, thanks for coming back. Thanks for making Locked On Blues part of your daily routine, making this show your hashtag first listen. Going to be a fun episode today, as for the first time in what feels like forever, the Blues have been playing some consistent good hockey, led by young goaltender Joel Hofer. Like I said, he has been spectacular. So I'm going to be talking about him today, as well as just the Blues performance against Winnipeg as a whole, plus previewing the game between the St. Louis Blues and Detroit Red Wings, which is probably going to be going on when this episode goes live. So, going to try to keep it a little topical, just because by the time most of you guys are going to be listening to or watching this episode, that game will have already ended. So they do play them in their next game as well. So still some good conversation there to be had. But let's just jump into it. The first segment is going to be about, my overall broad takeaways from the Winnipeg game. Second segment is going to be more catered towards individual performances. And then third segment is going to be a preview for tonight's game. So let's just jump into the first segment. St. Louis Blues took on the Winnipeg Jets in their most recent game, and despite getting outshot 34-17, which I will go into later, a little bit concerning there, but despite getting outshot, they were able to come away with a shutout, which is something the Blues have not done much this year at all. 3-0. It wasn't just Joel Hofer's shutout, as he did have to leave the game for a few minutes due to a skate blade popping off, and Thomas Greiss came in and made one save, so little annoying there. That Hofer wasn't credited with the shutout, but it is what it is. And I don't suspect it'll take too long before he gets himself a full shutout. But yeah, the game started off pretty strong with recent acquisition, Kasperi Kapanen scoring a tip goal to make it 1-0 St. Louis, assisted from Nick Leddy, who has been putting up a decent amount of points lately. After that, Nathan Walker, the Aussie, gets his second goal of the season on a nice wrist shot. Just beat the goalie, plain and simple, to put the Blues up 2-0. And then Jakub Vrana. Apologies, I've been mispronouncing his name the last few episodes, but some of you let me know in the comments, so appreciate that. Jakub Vrana gets himself his sixth goal of the season, and I believe his fifth goal as a member of the St. Louis Blues, on a breakaway midway through the third period to put the Blues up 3-0. And after that, it was smooth sailing. Overall takeaways from this game, the positives are that the defense has been playing pretty good hockey as of late, specifically Colton Parayko. I'll get into this, like I said, some of the more individual performances in the second segment, but I think Colton Parayko has been playing some really strong hockey lately. The defense as a whole has been very good, and Joel Hofer has been a very pleasant surprise for the Blues coming up in the midst of Jordan Binnington's suspension. He will be with the team, I think, for the rest of the season. They're going to run 3 goalies, and he is getting the start tonight as well. So exciting to see stuff there. Major takeaway from this game is the trade deadline acquisitions, whether it be the Kapanen waiver addition or the Jakub Vrana trade, which was for nothing, has turned into pretty much the Blues' entire offense lately. Vrana is racking up the goals. He has more goals than Vladimir Tarasenko has for the New York Rangers. Kasperi Kapanen Not quite as much production from the goal standpoint, but still playing really well there, getting himself some assists as well. Um, and Doug Armstrong is looking like a bit of a genius. Now, if you're like me and you're secretly in the back of your mind watching the standings and rooting for the Blues to get a good draft pick, not saying rooting for them to lose necessarily, but at the end of the day, you would like them to get a good draft pick. It might not be the best news in the world, but it is exciting seeing them play good hockey. And that whole draft pick thing is why the next two games against Detroit are pretty big for the Blues in the sense that the Detroit Red Wings are 2 points ahead of them in the standings. So if the Blues beat Detroit tonight, they, I believe, flip flop, and Detroit now has a higher pick in the draft lottery, and the Blues move down. So if you are rooting for the Blues to tank, then you're definitely rooting for the Detroit Red Wings tonight and in their next game as well. But other than that, those implications, it should be a good test for the Blues, a team that is in a similar place to them. A lot of familiar faces coming back to St. Louis for that game, so it's going to be exciting there. Seeing Perron and them, but I'll get into that later. Getting sidetracked here. Yeah, I mean it was a really strong win for the Blues, and Hofer was the standout. It's encouraging to see that the Blues can win despite putting up 17 shots. However, shot generation has been a big problem lately for the offense. There's been a couple games now where they've been like pretty much doubled on the shot board. Um, and it's not encouraging. I mean, the problem all year. I remember there's a statistic from a while ago. I don't know if it still rings true, but there was only like 3 teams in the NHL that had yet to generate 40 shots on goal in a game, and it was like the two worst teams. It was like San Jose, Chicago, who were like bottom 2 teams in the league, and then the St. Louis Blues. I might be wrong, but I just don't feel like the Blues have had a 40 shot game this season. Maybe they've had one, but shot generation has been a problem all season. And lately, they've been getting lucky. They are not necessarily getting lucky because their goals have been legit, but getting lucky in the sense that typically when you get 17 shots on goal in a game, you don't win and you don't put up 3 goals. So Blues are lucky in that sense. But that is definitely something I hope gets addressed moving forward. I hope the Blues get more shots tonight against Detroit because it is not a recipe for success. Getting less than 20 shots in an NHL game. That being said, it's time to move on to our second segment where I'm going to be talking about some individual performances from the Winnipeg game and whether or not those guys can carry them over tonight against Detroit. But before I get into that, I want to tell you guys about FanDuel Sportsbook. The tournament is heating up, and now is the perfect time to download FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook, because new customers get a no-sweat first bet up to $1,000. That's bonus bets back if your first bet doesn't win. Just download the FanDuel Sportsbook app. It is safe, secure, and super easy to use. You can bet on anything from the money line to point scorers and threes drained. Maybe you got yourself an underdog that you're looking at in the tournament. There's not a lot of high seeds left, but if you're you're feeling lucky, put your money where your mouth is. Make some money, watch some basketball, or watch some hockey, whatever your heart desires. FanDuel even lets you combine your bets for a better chance at a bigger payout with a same game parlay. So don't miss the chance to get your no sweat first bet up to $1,000 in bonus bets when you go to fanduel.com/locked on. That is fanduel.com/locked on to learn more. Make every moment more with FanDuel, an official sports betting partner of the NBA. I'll be right back with the second half of today's episode. All right, so there are a couple of individual players that I want to talk about in this segment before moving on to tonight's game against the Detroit Red Wings, and the first of which is Colton Parayko. Colton Parayko is the absolute scapegoat for Blues fans for everything that's gone wrong this season. Um, Somewhat rightfully so, as he hasn't lived up to expectations defensively, uh, really ever besides the Cup run, and he has been skewered by fans and to a lesser extent media, but fans have been very, very critical of his play. And I've said this before, but the saying goes something like along the lines of let your praise be as loud as the disrespect was, or something like that. And Parayko has not been getting the praise he deserves for his good play lately. Pretty much the only thing that's happened is people have stopped roasting him as much on Twitter and such because he's actually been playing really good hockey. Um, I would argue he's playing close to his best hockey since that Cup run in these past few games. And I'm not really sure what happened. It kind of just flipped the switch, you know. I mean, maybe he's finally getting fully healed from that back injury that's been nagging him for a couple years. Maybe it's finally getting comfortable with his playing partner and the defensive pairing's not getting shifted around as much, or maybe it's just I don't know. Maybe it's defensive scheme. It's tough to tell because it feels like the defense isn't playing all that differently. Like the defense still feels kind of weak to me. Um, they're still giving up a lot of shots on goal, but they've been getting better goaltending. But Colton Parayko, I think, has really turned his game around over the last few weeks. His positioning has been really, really good. He's not turning the puck over, which was an issue for him. And he's playing a lot stronger than he has in the past. That was always a big criticism, is that he plays like he's Torrey Krug size, but yet he's this 6'6" behemoth. He should be playing you know, like a 6'6" behemoth. And I think he's kind of leaning into that a little bit more. He's been throwing his body around a little bit more, throwing checks a little bit more than usual. Um, but it really does just come down to positioning defensively. I think he's been breaking up a lot of passes. He's been making a lot of good plays. And one of the biggest issues with Parayko when he struggles is you watch a replay of a goal and you're like, why the heck was Colton Parayko there? Why was he at the blue line when the opposing team had the puck, right at the goal mouth or something like that? And haven't seen that out of Parayko a lot lately. It seems like he is in the right place almost every single time. Um, and when he's in the wrong place, it's because he made a risky pinch or something like that. So I think that shouldn't go understated that he has been really, really good lately. And it is very encouraging, moving forward. Obviously, he is signed to the massive contract extension. And, he's going to be, unless barring a trade, he's going to be a core piece of the Blues blue line until I'm like 30, which is crazy. So the next, 8 years, for those of you that don't know how old I am. But yeah, it's encouraging. You would hate to see Parayko struggle and then immediately get started on that 8-year extension and wonder, like, is he going to get bought out someday? Is he going to get traded? I would much rather have Colton Parayko be a core piece of this team than a core piece of another team. Uh, he's fun to watch play, and he's very skilled when he wants to be, offensively as well as defensively. Um, so I would love to see a future where Colton Parayko is a number one or number two defenseman for the St. Louis Blues moving forward. I still think the defense needs a massive, massive, massive overhaul, and I don't think that can happen overnight or just in the span of one offseason. But if Colton Parayko can be a part of that, he can be sort of a building block for the Blues to build out the rest of the defense around him. I think that's great, because if Colton Parayko isn't part of your defensive future, who is? I mean, you look at Torrey Krug, can't really stay healthy, undersized defenseman, approaching the wrong side of 30. It's not He's not a guy that you can build around at this, point in time. Justin Falk, who previously was the Blues' best defenseman, has been having his worst year as a St. Louis Blue. He's really been struggling, and maybe, not the guy to build around for the future. And then you look at the rest of the defense and you look at youth, and there really isn't any. Scott Perunovich is like the only option there, but he's kind of just a Torrey Krug hybrid, an undersized defenseman who can't stay healthy. So again, there's not a lot of solid future for the defense, which is concerning because all those guys are locked up on long-term contracts, and Parayko, Falk, Letty, Krug. Those guys are all going to be around here, barring a trade for a few seasons past this. So I hope Doug Armstrong has some tricks up his sleeve, because the defense looks like they are going to be playing in front of a solid goaltending duo of Jordan Binnington and Joel Hofer next season. I want to talk about Hofer now, obviously. Hofer, I think it's Hofer. He has been spectacular, given me flashbacks of when Jordan Binnington came up and just sort of reignited a spark in the team. It feels like the team has been playing harder in front of him than they had been in the few weeks, leading up to Binnington's suspension. I think the team has been playing with some grit, with some fire. I mean, you saw Torrey Krug get himself thrown out of the game, um, against Winnipeg after disagreeing with the penalty call and smashing his stick against the penalty box door. You saw Braden Shen get into a fight where he absolutely dummied Ehlers. It feels like this team has a reignited passion. I think a big part of that is the play of Joel Hofer. Goalie, young goalie. I think he's younger than me. I think he's like 22. Um, Gets brought up from the AHL in the midst of a suspension, gets himself a start, goes out there and only allows 2 goals to a pretty strong Washington Capitals offense and then comes out and shuts out the Winnipeg Jets, who, aren't the best team in the NHL, but they're pretty darn good and they have a pretty potent offense. So, it's unfortunate that he couldn't get the full shutout due to that skate blade popping off, but really encouraging stuff from him. I'm really, really excited to see what he can do tonight against the Detroit Red Wings and for the rest of the season. I wouldn't be surprised to see him and Bennington split the starts from here on out. Maybe with Grice sort of moving into that third goalie role. We'll see. Maybe it's just a short-lived stint for Hofer. Maybe he kind of falls back down to earth and doesn't play as well, but he looks really, really fundamentally solid. His positioning is spectacular. His rebounding control is really good. He doesn't look out of control. A lot of times when you see goalies make these spectacular hot dog saves, it's because they're out of position and they're flailing across the crease to get back into position. And, Hofer hasn't had one highlight reel save up until this point. I mean, that's not true, but, there's good reason for that. That's a compliment because he is always in the right place, always in the right place to make the save, which is really encouraging. He looks wise beyond his years. He doesn't look like, I think he's still classified as a rookie. He definitely is. But he plays like a veteran. He plays with a lot of confidence, a lot of swagger. One thing that I really love about Hofer is when the Blues score, he actually goes out to the bench and is the final fist bump in the goal line, which is something you typically see in high school or juniors, but not in the NHL like ever. So I love that. It seems like the players really like him. Seems like he really likes being up with a big club, and I think for the foreseeable future, he's going to be an NHLer. I think he's going to be an NHLer for the rest of the season, and there's no reason why he wouldn't be one next season as well. I'm really, really excited to see him play and grow and potentially take over the starting job from Binnington a few years down the line. Gotta be patient, gotta wait. That being said, we get to watch him play in about an hour from when I'm saying this, and maybe about 20 minutes from when you're watching this or listening to this, if you watch it when it first comes out, because the St. Louis Blues take on the Detroit Red Wings. But before I get into that, I want to tell you guys about Built Bar. If you're looking for a delicious treat, but you don't want all the fat and calories, you got to try yourself a Built Bar. They're delicious protein bars that taste like a candy bar. They're covered in chocolate, and they're amazing, super delicious, and very good for you, very healthy. What makes Built Bar so good? For starters, like I said, they are covered in 100% real chocolate. That's right, real chocolate, and they come in unbelievable flavors like churro, peanut butter brownie, and coconut almond. I'm not sure how Built does it, but these bars taste like a candy bar while maintaining amazing macros. And what's even better is that they're healthy. They're good for you. Like I said, you look at the back, you look at the macros, you'll be blown away. 130 calories, 4 grams of sugar, and a whopping 17 grams of protein. And now you don't need to wait around for a box for years. We've been talking about ordering your Built Bars at Built.com, but now you can get them at your local Walmart or Sam's Club. So head to your nearest Walmart today, walk into the pharmacy section, grab yourself a box of Built Bars. You can pick up a 4-bar box of cookies and cream, double chocolate, or coconut puffs. If you're close to a Sam's Club, you can get yourself a 13-bar box, a good old baker's dozen, with brownie batter and churro and other flavors as well. You can thank me later. And plus, if you want to order online, like I said, you can always go to Built.com. So be right back with the end of today's episode. Don't go anywhere. All right, the St. Louis Blues have a very important game in the Battle of the Tank against the Detroit Red Wings, a team that is only 2 points ahead of them in the standings. So a win would, I believe, give the Red Wings the Blues' current lottery odds and vice versa. So if you're rooting for the Tank, you're rooting for the Blues to lose. If you're rooting for the Blues to win, because you're a normal fan, and you're rooting for the Blues to win. But important tidbit at this time in the season. Like I said earlier, Joel Hofer does get the start for the St. Louis Blues. I believe Billy Husso is getting the start for the Red Wings. Let me confirm that before I go any further. Okay, it is not confirmed yet, at least not that I can see. So, I don't know. David Perron, obviously, makes his return to St. Louis. That's going to be tough to see. Obviously, love David Perron. Wish he would have been on the team this year. Very, very loyal to the city of St. Louis and the team. And it's tough to see him in another jersey, and it's especially tough to see him, play against the Blues in that jersey. But it is what it is. In terms of players to watch, Jordan Kyrou has 5 goals over his last 5 games, and to go along with 7 points. You'll never guess who the Blues leader in plus the last 5 games, but it is Marco Scandella sitting at a +5. Plus minus isn't all that important, but still just wanted to point it out. Robert Thomas leads the way in assists over the last 5 for the St. Louis Blues with 5. In terms of the Detroit Red Wings, Giasson leads the way in goals. I hope I said that name right. With 3 goals in their last 5. Dylan Larkin, who recently signed a big contract extension, has 6 points in the last 5. However, plus minus wise, they've been giving up a lot of goals. So Larkin is their leader at +1. If it is Ville Husso in net for the Red Wings, he's got a 25-25 record on the season, 8.99 goals save percentage. Joel Hofer is in the starters net for the St. Louis Blues. He is 2-0 on the season with a 970 save percentage. Great stuff there. Similar power play, 20th for the Blues, 19th for the Red Wings. Same thing with penalty kill, 19th ranked penalty kill for the Red Wings, 21st for the St. Louis Blues. Face-off percentage, very similar. So possession is going to be an important one there. Every face-off is going to count. 18th in the NHL for the Blues, 20th for the Red Wings. Goals per game, offense, Blues are 17th, Red Wings are 23rd. And defense, goals allowed, Blues are 26th, and the Red Wings are 20th. So a very, very, very even matchup, at least from the broad statistic angle. I think Detroit is a bit of a middle of the road team this year, and in terms of like expectations, but it's going to be a tough matchup. They play hard. They're a young team led by the veteran David Perron, and I think he's going to be a guy to watch tonight for sure. I would fully expect him to score a couple goals just because he likes to show up in games like this. And yeah, it's going to be tough to see him score against the Blues. Again, I'm fully predicting it. But maybe not. Maybe Hofer will have a shutout, which would be cool as well. In terms of Blues player to watch, I mean, Kyrou has been on an absolute heater lately. Jakub Vrana has been on a heater recently. I think it's going to be an offensive battle tonight. I think both teams struggle defensively. Maybe Hofer has the edge just because he's been playing so well lately. But I would expect there to be a good chunk of goals scored tonight. And historically, that has fared well for the St. Louis Blues when they're scoring a lot of. They have a really deep offense, so when they're scoring a lot of goals, it's typically a recipe for success for them. Because they only issue is they tend to give up a lot of goals when they score a lot of goals. They tend to play a little bit looser defensively when they're putting the puck in the net a lot. So we'll see if that's the case tonight. Maybe I'll be wrong. Maybe it'll be a 1-0 shutout, and I'll look silly. That being said, though, that is all the time I have for you guys today. Thank you all so much for tuning in. Make sure you check out the show wherever you get your podcast. It is completely free and available everywhere, as well as on YouTube. Check out the show on Twitter and YouTube as well. I'm running another Blue or False poll episode tomorrow. So if you want to vote in the polls and have your comments read live on the show, definitely check out. The same polls are on Twitter and on YouTube in the community tab. So check those out. Make sure you vote. Got some spicy takes in there. I'm excited to talk about those tomorrow. And if you want to be included in the show, like I said, go vote. Go leave a reply calling me an idiot for even having the take or praising me. I'm a genius. Josh, I can't believe you thought of this. You're so smart. Or call me an idiot. It's probably the first one. Yeah, check out the show on Instagram as well at Locked On Blues. You can check me out on Twitter at Josh Hyman NHL. Thank you all so much for listening. And as always, let's go Blues.